Hello, my name is Jake, and today I'm going to be breaking down drum set level 2, Goodbye Yesterday. So before we begin, it's important to note that each drum, each cymbal, it all has its own spot on our staff. So our F space or our bottom space, that's going to be our bass drum. And our top line, the one above the line, our first ledger line, is going to be our crash cymbal, right there. Those are the first two things that we're going to start with. Very simple. So our quarter note is 150. So it's nice driving beat that we got here. You're just simply going to start with the crash and bass drum on beat 1 and then just keep going with the bass drum. And then it repeats. Very simple. Your bass drum, it's quite the exercise, I will say, for your right foot. This entire piece, your bass drum is just boom, 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 boom the entire time. We call that 4 on the floor. It's a very interesting technique. It's very good to like fill out your worship music. So once we get to measure 9, we have a very interesting rhythm. It looks like a mistake. It's not a mistake. You're going to start with the hit on the ride cymbal, and then you're going to go right over to hi-hat. And then on measure 10 on beats 4 and, you have 4 and, it's called an open hi-hat. So there's a circle over the hi-hat, over the note. And that basically just means you're going to lift up your left foot and open your hi-hat. There's different ways to do it. You don't want to open up too much because then you just hear the top cymbal. You don't want to open up not enough because then you don't really hear anything. So you got to kind of mess with it and find that sweet spot. You want to sizzle. You want to sizzle. That's what you're looking for. And you're just looking for a nice cymbal. You're just lifting your toe. That's really all you're doing. So you're going to 4 and 1. You're going to hit the ride cymbal on that. So easy sticking to do here, as most people would think, just stay with the left hand on the hi-hat. I wouldn't do that. On beat 4, I would go right, left, and then ride cymbal on the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 1. 4 and 1. Just like that. And then you just add the bass drum in with that. Very important thing to notice is that hit, that downbeat at measures 9, 11, right? That's not a crash cymbal. That's not a crash cymbal. That's a ride cymbal. When you see the 2 with the 2 slash lines and the 2 circles, that basically just means you're going to repeat the last 2 measures that you just played. And you're just going to go in those sections, right? So if you can look at the pattern from measures 19 to 17, you play this pattern. You play that pattern 4 times. And then once you get to 23 and 24, it changes up just a little bit. So you're going to stay on hi-hat, but then measures 24, it says open hi-hat gradually. What you're going to do is literally just take your foot and just slowly start to open it. So it's like every time you hit it, the hi-hat opens just a little bit more, giving it a little bit more sizzle. And then you're going to end with a crash. It's like that. You can crescendo 24 a little bit. It makes it sound a little bit more musical, a little bit more natural, but I wouldn't crescendo too much. Once we get into 25, very cool tom rhythm. It's a little tricky to get. This is what we call a polyrhythm. Your hands are playing something completely different than your feet. They're playing a steady pattern that is completely different. And so basically your feet are just together. They're playing quarter notes. So you're playing bass drum and hi-hat. I don't know if you can see it from over there, but what I'm doing with my left foot is I'm literally just stomping, and I'm stomping with my right foot at the same time. That's what we call, I don't know, I don't know what we call that. But you're just playing that together. So you can see how it can kind of be a workout for your right foot. So it's very important when you're practicing is to just keep going, and you got to build up that endurance in your right foot. Otherwise, once you get to the end, once you get to measure 25, you're going to slow down, you'll be off the track, it won't sound as good as it could, and you'll end up losing points for slowing down. So it's very important to keep that beat going when you're at school or whatever. Just keep a metronome going, 150, click, 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 whatever it is. Just keep that going. So basically 25, you're going to start with a crash, bass drum, and a hi-hat, and it's sound like this, right? And then once you keep going, it's going to be this weird rhythm. I don't really know how to explain it, but on the and of 2, you're going to hit high tom. On beat 4, you're going to hit middle tom. And then on that second measure, on the and of 1, you hit the floor tom. And then on 3 and 4, it's snare drum. So very slowly, it sounds like this. Over time, that builds up. Another thing to note is your sticking. Unlike snare drum, there's no sticking written for drum set, but we have some general rules. You typically do not want to cross your hands over like this, okay? So when we go around the toms, I would say it's easier to start with the high tom with your right hand. So you hit the cymbal with your right hand, high tom with your right hand, middle tom, left hand, and then floor tom, you typically really only hit it with your right hand because otherwise you're crossing over with your left hand. The only exception is when we play 16ths and you need both hands at the floor tom. So again, right hand, left hand, right hand. And then right, left, right. You can mess with that. That's open for you to interpret however you want, whatever's comfortable for you. Just know that the most important thing would be right hand on the floor tom. The other stuff you can just do however you would like. Once we get to measure 39, the rhythm stays the same. The only difference is we're just changing the placement of our hands. So instead of keeping our hands on the toms for those ups and those down beats on the and of 2 and 4 and the and of 1, what you're going to do is you're going to keep your hands at the snare drum to play the and of 2, the beat 4, and the and of 1. And then you have 2 flams on 3 and 4 on the toms. The middle tom and the floor tom. So that sounds like this, just slowly. And then end with the crash and bass drum. At measure 42, you keep the bass drum going, but you have a crash cymbal roll. And you're just going to crescendo that. Very important to crescendo these all the time. You don't want a constant wall of sound coming from your cymbal if it's building up into like a change in the song. So like if it's going into the bridge, you don't want the entire time. You want going right into it. So 42, just that roll, and then when we get into 43, you are hitting the high tom and middle tom at the same time. It's just gonna depend on your kit. Most drum sets don't have the middle tom. That's okay. Just make do with what you have. You can play the high tom and the floor tom if you don't have the middle tom, but if you do have the middle tom, play the middle tom. You're just gonna play 1, 2, and then you're just gonna rest for 6 beats and then do that 3 times. So that sounds like this. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? important thing to know is that at 43, you're just playing the toms. You're not playing bass drum with that. You're not playing snare drum with that. It's just your hands. 1, 2. Once we get to, what is that, 49, it is kind of the same rhythm. It's a little bit different. This is a very popular rock rhythm. I love doing this. You're just hitting snare drum, cymbal at the same time, and bass drum is just going boom, 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 boom. You're keeping those driving eighth notes going. But you're just kind of offsetting them. So you have downbeat, 1, 2, and you have the and of 2 with the cymbal and the snare, and then 3, 4, and. The and of 4 is a cymbal and a snare hit, and then you got 1, 2, and then it's tom, tom, middle tom. So high tom, middle tom. So that whole thing. One more time. High tom, low tom. And then when we get into 51, it's basically the same rhythm that we played the first time at the chorus at 25, except for it's just kind of, it's adding on to what we did at 43 with playing 2 toms at the same time. And then you have the 16th notes on the snare drum. So it's that same polyrhythm, you're just using both your hands at the same time now. So 1, 2, 4, 4, 1. It just repeats. I'll break that down a little bit more. So on the and of 2 in measure 51, you have the high tom and you have the middle tom. You're playing those together. On beat 4, that same measure, you have middle tom and 4 tom. You're playing those together, and then back to the same high tom, middle tom, snare drum. Important to note, beat 4 of that second measure is just bass drum. It's just bass drum. There's no snare hit. It's just bass drum. So up to tempo. Another thing that you can do is you can accent the snare hits on beat 3, but only on beat 3. A lot harder on that third note. I'll make it stand out. The 16th notes are kind of a pickup. And then when we get to measure 57, we have that same rhythm that we had at measure 49. And then 58 is just snare, 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 tom, tom. So those two measures together. And 59 is the same thing that we just did at 51. And then when we get to 65, it's the same rhythm. Right? So there's a kind of bit of a motif going on throughout this whole thing. And then 66, it's the same rhythm as measure 50. You're just changing your placement. So snare, snare, tom. When we get to 67, this is simply just an eighth note build. So you're going to have a quarter note on the downbeat, but it's going to be snare drum, bass drum, cymbal, and then you're just going to build. So another thing that you can do, this is open to interpretation here. You can crescendo these eighth notes, right? It does sound a little bit better. If I play this, you get the point. There's not that much excitement to it, but if I play this, you get the point. It just adds a little bit more excitement. So you can do that. but you don't have to. If you can't get your hands going that fast, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can just keep the constant eighth notes going. 70, what is that? 73, measure 73. It's very much like all those like crash cymbal snare hits that we've been doing, except for it's just a little bit different. On the measure 73, you have the hit on beat 4 instead of the and of 4. So it's just like the tom groove that we've been doing, and then you keep it going into 74. You have it on the and of 1, and then you have. Sorry, you have the middle tom, floor tom. So you can do right, left, right, left, right. That's probably preferred. Very simple. The important thing to notice about measure 74 is you only have 2 bass drum hits. You only have 2 bass drum hits. Beats 3 and 4 is just your hands. Right? So let's play measure 73 together. 1, 2, ready, go. Very simple. And then we get into 75. This is the chorus. This is the main chorus here. So you can notice here that we're going to keep the same rhythm going, the same polyrhythm going with our hands, except for our right hand is just going to be playing quarter notes. And you will be playing those, I believe, you'll be playing those on the ride. So you have to crash it. While you're doing that, you have your bass drum going at the same time. And then it's just throwing in your left hand on the snare drum. Measure 81 and 82. 81 is the same thing that we've been doing. When we get to measure 82, it's very simple. Your right hand is still going. Your left hand is playing kind of the same rhythm. Your bass drum is just quarter notes the entire time, right? Important thing to notice is that we don't play snare drum at all in this entire measure. So you're playing high tom, middle tom, and this is one of those rare instances where we'll play our floor tom with our left hand. So you're just kind of filling in on the ups for beats 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Oompa, oompa, boom, boom. Very simple. When we get to 83, it's kind of the same rhythm. You got this. It's just you're adding flams, right? Very simple. Yep. And then your downbeat, your last note is just crash cymbal and bass drum. And that's it. And once you've learned that, you have mastered drum set level 2, Goodbye Yesterday.